x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so we talked about finding the angle using the given information. And so in questions, first three examples, we were just looking in quadrant 1 and trying to find the angle whose value was this. And so we're going to do the same thing, except for this time we're looking on the whole unit circle. Looking for the values on the whole unit circle, and we're going to actually find two angles. The two values of theta is our variable, the two values of theta that will give us the square root of 2 over 2. Well, there's some basic things we have to remember. First of all, we have the unit circle, so you should have your unit circle out in front of you while you're doing this exercise. And then second, we have this information. So we know that in the unit circle, x is the same as cosine, y is the same as sine, tangent is y over x, and then cosecant, secant, and cotangent are the reciprocal functions. So cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So sine is y, so cosecant is 1 over y. Cosine is x, so secant is 1 over x, and cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So this says we want to find the angle whose cosine is the square root of 2 over 2. So what that means is the angle who has an x value, right? Cosine is x. The angle who has an x value with the square root of 2 over 2. So we're going to look at all the x values on the unit circle and find which ones have the square root of 2 over 2. So I'm going to start here and go in this direction, because since this is 0, 30, 45, 60, and so on. So this is x value of 1, that's not it. The square root of 3 over 2, that's not it. And this one is the square root of 2 over 2. So this is exactly what we're looking for. So I want to know the angle whose cosine is square root of 2 over 2. Well, that angle is 45 degrees, which is pi over 4. So that's 45 degrees, which is pi over 4. But there's more than one answer. We're not just in the first quadrant. So we're going to go outside of the first quadrant and find another x value of the square root of 2 over 2. So we'll go over here. This is 1/2 and 0. This is -1/2, negative square root of 2 over 2. So that's a similar value, but it has a negative in front. So that's not what we're looking for. In fact, as I go over here, it looks like all the x values are negative. That's because this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, and if we start at the origin and we go to the left, the x value is obviously going to be negative. So our answer is not going to be over here. Here x value is 0, 1/2, and here's a square root of 2 over 2 as well. And so another answer, when the cosine of this angle is equal to the square root of 2 over 2. This angle is 315 degrees, or 7 pi over 4. So this is 315 degrees, which is 7 pi over 4. All right, let's try the same thing with sine. So sine is the y value, right? Y is sine. So we're looking for the angle whose sine is -1/2. So I'm going to erase our previous answers and look for sine to be -1/2. So sine is the y value, and I'm looking for y to be -1/2. So I'd go through my unit circle now. Here I notice that these values of y are all positive, and of course that makes sense because this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. The y values up here are positive, so y values down here are negative. So I'm looking for values down here where y is equal to -1/2. So here's a value where y is equal to -1/2, and so that's one of my answers. 210 degrees, which is 7 pi over 6. 210 degrees, which is 7 pi over 6. And I'm looking for more y values that are -1. This is not it. That's not it. Y value of -1, y value of negative square root of 3 over 2, y value of negative square root of 2 over 2. And here's a y value of -1/2. So that's the other value. And that occurs here, 11 pi over 6, which is 330 degrees. So 330 degrees, which is 11 pi over 6. And I know some of you are saying to yourself, hey, these answers seem to be in the same family of values. This is pi over 4 family, and that's the pi over 4 family. This is pi over 6 family, and this is the pi over 6 family. So if you've already made that connection, great. If not, you should look at that connection and recognize that we're going to get things that are in the same family of values. All right, so we're going to do another example, and this problem is a little bit more challenging. There's more going on here. We're going to try to find the secant of theta, the angle whose secant is negative 2 root 3 over 3. A couple things to recognize is that negative 2 root 3 over 3 is not any of these values. It's not any of the x values or the y values on this unit circle. But secant is expected to be a little bit different. We got a secant is 1 over x. So we need to find an x value that has a negative in it, because it's negative, and also has a square root of 3 in it. So I'm looking for a secant who has a negative and a square root of 3 in it. Well, secant has to do with x. It's 1 over x. So let's look at the x values when x is both negative and has a square root of 3 in it. So all the x's in quadrant 1 are positive, so we're not dealing with any of those. But the x values here are negative, so this could be where we're looking. And I'm looking for something that has a square root of 3 in it. And it looks like this has a square root of 3 in it. So this is one possible value. We're going to check the math on it in a second. And the second possible value is I want another value where x is negative square root of 3 over 2. So x is negative square root of 3 over 2 here as well. And notice these are both in the pi over 6 family. We have to do some math to verify that this is the value we're looking for, because negative square root of 3 over 2 is not the same as negative 2 root 3 over 3. But the secant is 1 over x. So the secant is 1 over x, negative square root of 3 over 2. Well, this fraction bar is the same as division. So we're going to rewrite it as division. And so this is 1 divided by negative square root of 3 over 2. And we can make 1 into its own fraction, 1 over 1. When we divide fractions, we keep the first fraction, change the sign from division to multiplication, and then flip the second. So this is going to be 1 over 1 times 2 over the square root of 3, and of course that's negative. And so I'm going to multiply, and I get negative 2 over the square root of 3. That's not quite what we have over there, but remember, when we have a radical in the denominator, we can't leave it there. So we need to rationalize the denominator, and the way we do that is multiply the top and bottom of the fraction by the square root of 3. So multiply the top and bottom by the square root of 3, and I get negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. And that is what I'm looking for. So I now know my answer is these two angles. So 150 degrees, which is 5 pi over 6. So 150 degrees, or 5 pi over 6, is one answer. And the other answer is 210 degrees, which is 7 pi over 6. 210 degrees, or 7 pi over 6. And that's how you use the unit circle to find the angle when you're given the value.